All right, ladies and gents, shall we begin another video? Welcome, my name is Taylor Venture. This whole channel is dedicated to helping you grow your agency. Even though if you don't run an agency, it's still probably helpful. Radical transparency is going to be the topic of today, a very important, more or less mental model, not really, but just kind of like a value that I think you should have in your agency, in your company, in your life, in your personal life, in your relationship, in everything, man. Radical transparency is a beautiful thing. So let's dive straight into the whiteboard and talk about more or less the pros and cons of this thing and how you can apply it in your agency. Because when you do this, you'll have a better culture, you'll have a better experience for the rest of your team, you'll be much happier, and just in general, your company is likely to grow much faster. And let's get into the reasons as to why. So first of all, radical transparency. Let me tell you our first step into radical transparency. I would say the first step was really OBM, which is an open book management, which means that the finances are open. Everyone can see them within the company. Everyone receives a email basically telling them, hey, here's how much cash we collected today. Here's where our revenue is this month, last month, this quarter, last quarter, this year versus last year. Everyone knows how much profit is being made, and basically the finances are wide open. That was the first step that we went into. Now, this was a huge deal for me because prior to OBM, I was not paying myself a salary. I was pretty much just paying myself random amounts of money per month, which equated to a lot more than what I probably should have been paying myself had I just been on a salary. So it was very great for myself personally, or for you as a founder, because it'll hold you accountable to paying yourself a standard salary and keeping it there. Now the moment we did OBM, I set a salary and it's been there and it hasn't changed ever since. It's been probably just over a year since we started doing that. Now that's been beautiful. So it's held me accountable to not just pulling out ridiculous amounts of cash so that I can just spend it on ridiculous things, which I did for the first couple years of running this agency, and I absolutely killed a lot of the profit margins because I would either spend an insane amount of money on hiring someone that we didn't need to hire, buying a course that we didn't need to buy, trying to start a venture that we should have never tried to start. Lots of just different things that were more or less, not all of them, but most of them, distractions that should have never happened. Okay, so accountability will keep you accountable, and you won't be able to just pull out 20 grand. And if you do pull it out, everyone's going to see it. And so you're going to have to explain why you're pulling that out. If you're trying to buy some car, well, that's probably not going to make you look that great. I know a lot of people may feel like, oh, I'm a founder, I'm entitled to just pull out however much money I want. Yeah, that is kind of a toxic culture, and I would say not the best leadership style. We had this discussion at an offsite one time. One person said, well, you're more or less the founder. You can do whatever you want. I mean, even if you wanted to do that, we couldn't do anything. That, in my opinion, is not ideal. That's not really the mindset that you should have. You should be of the mindset that even if you are a founder, it doesn't matter. You need to pay yourself a standard salary. You need to keep consistent with that salary, and ideally the lower the better, because the more profits that you can have in the company, the more longer term you can think, and the greater it's going to be for your team, and the better of a leader you'll be, and that'll obviously help with retention of your team members and tons of other things. I mean, leadership in general is something that I feel like personally I've scratched the surface on and I'm not really the best at, but we'll continue to get better at it. However, just accountability, paying yourself a standard salary is super important. Number 2 is communication creep will reduce drastically, ladies and gents. Welcome to the world of an agency where we are talking about a people-oriented business that is very people-intensive, very human resources intensive because of the nature of the company. It's providing a service. The service is servicing people. Who services people? People service people, okay? We're not selling products to people, where that's a totally different game. You can have a 10-person team running a 8-figure, doing $20-30 million per year e-commerce brand that's selling products. You can't have a 10-person team running a $30 million per year agency. I don't think there is a single agency out there that's doing that. You need to have at least probably 50, 60 people. You could potentially have one with like 25. That'd be the most lean agency I've ever seen, 30 million a year with 20 people. That's potentially out there, but they're diamonds in the rough, okay? They're anomalies. So people intensive, what that happens is it creates a lot of communication creep. So when you don't have radical transparency and you try to silo people off and compartmentalize and utilize compartmentalization to basically make sure that this person doesn't know anything about that and that person doesn't know anything about this. This is a standard tactic that's used in companies like Bernie Madoff's scheme. I don't know if it's Enron or whatever that company was. There was recently a documentary that came out called Bad Blood. I highly recommend you watch this documentary. Phenomenal. If you haven't even read the book, I recommend you read the book as well. This woman in Silicon Valley who is trying to create, I don't know what it was. I think it was a fingerprint or it basically pricks your finger, and with a drop of blood, you can get your blood test taken to a certain degree, whereas you don't have to get the giant needle and whatever. Now, this woman, she ran her freaking company with the most bureaucracy, the most complete opposite of radical transparency, the most secrecy, the most compartmentalization possible. The engineers weren't allowed to talk to like the product development team or the marketing team. Everyone was segmented in different parts of the offices. Certain parts were locked, certain parts were unlocked. If you were here, you shouldn't have been here. If you're in this meeting, don't say anything that you heard in this meeting to anyone else. Ridiculous levels of secrecy and bureaucracy and drama, and this creates a terrible company. And if you want to see a real great example of what that looks like at scale, you can go watch the documentary Bad Blood, and you'll absolutely love it. Now, communication creep happens even at the small scale. So when you have radical transparency, you open up your books, you basically open up the conversation of something terrible happening. Maybe that you lost a huge client. Maybe this software broke down. Maybe you had to get rid of somebody because they did something that was super unethical in the company, and that was something that deserves to be fired for, basically, because it's extremely unethical and it breaks the core values of the company. Whatever happens, the terrible news should be reported. It should be openly told to everyone on an all-hands meeting or a call that you have with your entire team. When you're openly and you're very radically transparent about terrible things happening, mistakes, etc., everything else, it just allows you to grow so much quicker, and it gives everyone else the feeling of comfort that's needed to be able to be transparent with the mistakes that they might be making in the company. Because if you run a company where you get, I don't know what the word is, chastised? I forget the word, but basically if you run a company where if someone makes a mistake, you just lash out at them, and making mistakes is not allowed. You're going to create a culture in which if someone makes a mistake, they'll go out of their way to sweep it under the rug and hide it so that no one sees it, because they're too freaking scared to tell you. Because even if it's a small mistake, you have never made any mistakes. You, as a leader, as a founder, whatever, have never talked about ever making mistakes, and so everyone else feels like, oh my God, I better be perfect. So important that you are very vocal about mistakes and about terrible things that are going on. This is another form of radical transparency that you can do within your agency to increase or decrease the level of communication creep and increase the level of radical transparency. So that is right here on the whiteboard, announcing major losses. That's something that we'll do on our calls once a week with the team. If we lose any clients, that definitely gets reported. If we sign clients, of course, the flip side, announcing any major wins, we will also report that as well. So communication creep is huge. Now, bureaucracy, that kind of fell under communication creep, but it's a real thing when you're trying to keep everything secret. So it causes tons and tons and tons of problems. Now, faster evolution is the result of, accountability, communication creep, and bureaucracy, these things being dealt with. Accountability is a positive thing. Communication creep and bureaucracy are two negatives. So getting rid of 2 and 3 and increasing number 1, this creates faster evolution, ladies and gents. So practical examples of things you can do to increase radical transparency. OBM is one of them. That's huge. I recommend everyone starts out with OBM. Now, here is the level of OBM I recommend you start off with. Open up the books. You can share the revenue, the profit, the expenses, the loss, if there is a loss, and do that for however long you've been a company. Okay, that's totally fine. And how much cash is in the bank? That's huge. That one's a big one, so that everyone's aware of what the runway of the company is. Now, what you can keep private in the beginning, and this is what most people who utilize OBM, is the actual salaries of everyone on the team. That's common wisdom for most people for most companies who've started to use OBM. They'll keep salaries private just because of the fact that, oh, John is making XYZ and Sarah's only making XYZ, or blah, blah, blah. And it creates a lot of, let's just say, it can create, I don't know what the word would be, resentment or drama, or why is this person getting that and I'm only getting this? And you don't want that. You want people to be comparing themselves against themselves, and that's it. It is you versus you. And if you open up the books to salaries, I think what it does is it creates a you versus them mindset. And so we don't want to allow that seed into the farm, because it's not a seed. It is an absolute weed, and that thing will just create chaos and destroy all the crops, which is, the farm is your agency. I'm kind of making an analogy here. So agency dash is number 2. Just to conclude OBM, right? Share everything, all the books and everything. You just don't have to share the salaries. So that means that, again, you don't have to share your P&Ls, but you can share just revenue, profit, loss, profit margin percentage, cash in the bank, all of that for the lifetime of the agency. That'll be really great. Agency dash is number 2. So this is something where it's basically tells you who is managing what clients, how much MRR are they managing, how many clients have they signed personally? How many clients have they lost? What's their retention rate annually? What's their retention rate quarterly, etc.? All this stuff. This is what the agency dash tracks. Everyone has access to it. Everyone is in the agency dash that is an account manager, account executive. And that's an important thing that also increases transparency, because everyone can see what everyone is more or less bringing to the table and managing, which is important. So that one also helps increase radical transparency. Announcing major losses is a big one. You as a leader will play a very important role in this, okay? Because again, if you're a founder of your agency, I don't like to say it, but more or less people are gonna look up to you, and the direction of the company is gonna be very much on you. And that's the truth. And so if you don't really like this, you can't expect everyone else to like it. You have to absolutely be pushing for radical transparency 24/7 and making an effort to create that environment of radical transparency. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen over years and years and years of practicing it and pushing it, and basically trying to get everyone to realize this thing is super important. Let's maintain this. Let's maintain this. Let's maintain this. Let's increase it. So it's not going to happen overnight. Now, these are a few things, like emotionally speaking. Vulnerability is going to be very important. If when you're hiring, you should be looking for people that, it's difficult to do this in the hiring stage, because why would someone just open up about certain things and become vulnerable with you in the hiring stage? That's probably pretty rare. But you need to have some form of way to check their levels of humility in the hiring process. So levels of humility is pretty important. If someone is very egotistical, well, they're likely not going to be willing to share their big mistakes, and they're probably going to try to sweep them under the rug and hide them from you. So in radical transparency, there isn't really much place for ego, because the ego, the core of the ego is that I am perfect, everything I do is great, and I don't want to show anybody my flaws, because I don't have any flaws. It tries to cover up the flaws, and it never wants to be open about the mistakes. It just wants to take credit. It just wants to think that it's the best, that it always wins, etc. And basically it deserves all credit for everything. So ego doesn't have any humility. Now, vibes is also super important, because again, just without bureaucracy, without communication creep. By the way, communication creep is just when there's a lot of communication amongst your team because there's compartmentalization. The engineers don't understand what marketing is doing, and since marketing is promoting something new and the engineers don't know what marketing is promoting, that causes all sorts of chaos. Or certain scenarios where if you start promoting a new feature in your software that's coming out and the developers have no idea about this new feature, the support team has no idea about this new feature, now all of a sudden users are like, hey, where's this feature? And the support team blows up with tickets, and that whole system breaks down because someone in marketing made a decision that was not communicated with support, which was not communicated with the developers. So you have these different people in different departments, and the more you can streamline the communication between everyone, so everyone kind of hears the important messages that need to be heard, the better, basically. So communication creep is just over communication that happens through compartmentalization, secrecy, and the opposite of radical transparency. So ladies and gents, this was an epic video. I'm happy if you stuck to the end with me. I can't really describe to you how important this is until you start to scale your agency, hire more people, and begin to see certain things. And if you have a high EQ, you will certainly feel and see many different things in your agency that will cause you to really resonate with radical transparency. So much love. There's only one thing I ask for, which you know what it is. It is for you to hit the sub button and the notification bell if you have not already. There's 1.4 thousand people that have hit the sub button, which is pretty shocking to me considering we started this YouTube channel not too long ago. But there's never enough. So hit the notification bell, hit the sub button, hit the like button, and let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Much love, guys, and I hope you found this video valuable. Ciao.